Hey there, nation. Welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with our very first episode of Waaaghpokeylipz Now, our series of Warhammer Age of Sigmar battle reports that is done with a Path to Glory campaign. So my friends and I are pretty excited trying out this one. It is the very first time we actually played Path of Glory campaigns using small little war bands to fight against each other, and my friends and I were very fascinated by the rule set. So because of that, we decided to put together some war bands and had to fight out. Now this one is a little bit different than most Path of Glory campaigns, and the reason why it's so different is because my friends and I are using nothing but orcs and goblins on this one. There are 4 different war bands, 2 for orcs, 2 for grots. We have an Ironjawz war band, a Bonesplitterz war band, a Spike Gloom grots war band, as well as a Git Mob war band as well. So in our very first battle report number 1, it is an Altar of the Gods scenario that is fought between my friend Brother Grimm as myself. Let's see here. My Brother Grimm is bringing the Immortulz, which is his Ironjawz warband, and I'm bringing the Peeple Eataz, my newly completed Bonesplitterz warband. So we're going to be throwing it down here in our very first scenario for the campaign. So we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're taking, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, first of all, let's go ahead and talk about the scenario rules for Altar of the Gods. The goal is to control at least 3 different altars for a turn or completely destroy your enemy. As you can see in this picture, there are 4 altars that are located on all 4 corners of the battlefield. These 4 altars are the Altars of Rage, Altar of Doom, Altar of Resilience, as well as Altar of Change. And every single time you secure one of these altars, your character or champion can ask for the blessing of the altar. If you roll a d6 of 4 up, they get the blessing, and they get bonuses for it. For the Altar of Rage, your champion gets +1 hit rolls, and same thing with all units within 6 inches of him. The Altar of Doom gives +1 to wound rolls within 6 inches of the champion. Altar Resilience is +1 to save rolls to all the within 6 inches of the champion, and Altar of Change is also +1 damage to all melee weapons used by the champion as well. And so the goal, like I said before, is to at least control 3 of the altars for a turn or completely destroy an enemy to win the scenario. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go directly to the battle plan and talk about exactly how the battlefield looks. Alright, so here is an overhead shot of the battlefield. As you can see up in the corners, we have our 4 altars. First up on the left hand side, I believe that is the altar that gives +1 to hit. On the right hand side, in the upper right hand corner, that is the altar that's +1 to save. On the lower left hand column corner, that is the altar that gives +1 to wounds, and on the right hand, sorry, not +1 to wounds, that's the one that gives +1 to damage from melee weapons. And on the right hand side, that one is a +1 to wound as well. So you can see there, all 4 altars are located across the battlefield. As you can see, my friend departed on the near side of the table while I'm deployed on the far side of the table. Pretty much what my plan is, as you can see, we've kind of like staggered our forces because each of us has 3 like squads of troops with our characters. As you can see, we kind of went on like mirror reversal of each other. I have 2 units deployed on the left hand side while I have my unit, one of my units on the right hand side, and vice versa. He has 1 unit on the left hand side and 2 units on the right hand side. Pretty much what my plan is pretty much to assault forward with my 2 units of Savage Oryx on the left-hand side, heading towards his Ironjawz on the left-hand side as well. He only has 1 squad there, and the reason why that is the case is because his special character Grimgor Ironhide is located in that area as well. Meanwhile, on the far right-hand side, as you can see, I only have 1 unit of Savage Oryx armed with bows. Now, the reason why I'm not too worried about those guys so much is because these guys are Cunning Rooks, so because that I can use one of my squads to do 2 actions in the hero phase. And so my plan is to use the Cunning Rook to whittle down these 2 units of Ironjawz on the right hand side by using bowfire to weaken them. At the same time, I also have Waaaghpokeylipz, the Great Green Prophet. He's located there as well. Same thing with my Savage Orc Big Boss. So that way I can, lend in some magic support, whittle down these forces on the right hand side, and hopefully I can finish them off by charging forward with my Savage Oryx and then secure it. I'm not really planning on using and on capturing any altars really on my side of the table. I might use the one on the right hand side which gives +1 to saves, but other than that though, my plan is to pretty much finish off my opponent opponent. My opponent only has 15 Ironjawz as opposed to my 30 orcs, my 30 savage orcs. So the numbers are on my side. So I think the best way to win this is by just, attacking forward and just seizing the initiative and just destroying them that way. So that way I can achieve victory. And that's pretty much the battle plan I'm going for on this one. So with the battle plan over with, we go directly to deployment. So, starting off with the Ironjawz over here on the left-hand side, you can see there we have the Crimson Killers, which are 5 Ardboys of full command, and right next to them is Gringor Ironhide. They're next to the Altar of Change, which is if he manages to get the reward for that one, he gets +1 weapon damage to his melee weapons. So that would make him a very deadly character in that case. And on the right-hand side, next to the Altar of Doom, my friend, Brother Grimm has deployed his other 2 units of Ardboys. On the left-hand side, that is the Red Dead Cruvy. That's 5 Ardboys with full command. And on the right-hand side is Them Bloods, which is another unit of 5 Ardboys with full command. And right behind them is Srugga the Stunty Flayer. That is my friend's Weird Knob Shaman as well. And that pretty much makes up his units here on the right-hand flank. Meanwhile, across the table on the far side of the table, right next to the Altar of Rage, which is +1 to hit. As you can see, I got 2 units of 10 Aurochs there. On the left-hand side is a Raka, which is a unit of 10 Savage Aurochs armed with Champas and shields, as well as full command. And on the right-hand side is the Waaaghpokeylipz. I just like these names. The Waaaghpokeylipz is a unit of 10 Savage Aurochs armed with Savage Stickas, and they also have full command as well. And that makes up my left-hand flank on this battle report. And finally, on the right-hand side, next to the banner of the Altar of Resiliency, which gives +1 bonuses to saves, I have my 3rd unit of Savage Aurochs. This is the Twang, which is 10 Savage Auroch Arrow Boys. And right behind them, of course, is my 2 characters, Papa Shango, which is my Savage Auroch Big Boss. I'm sorry. He's the follower in this group. And then right next to him is my General Waaaghpokeylipz, the Great Green Prophet, which is my special character as well. And this one's looking kind of cool because if I can summon up this altar, I'll be able to give +1 save to all my units, which would be really, really impressive and really helpful at the same time. So yeah, that makes my deployment here on the right hand side. So with the deployment phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and my friend Brother Grimm and I, we roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so we go directly to the top of turn number 1. My friend Brother Grimm secures the initiative on this one, so we go directly to the hero phase. And as you can see, the first thing he does, he activates his command ability for his general, which gives basically all units within 10 inches of him +1 to hit as well. So that's the very first thing he does in the hero phase on the left-hand side of the battlefield. And on the right-hand side of the battlefield, he then activates Srugga the Stunty Flayer, his Weird Knob Shaman, who tries to use the spell Foot of Gork. Now, because he's running a Weird Fist Battalion for his army, whenever he's within 10 inches of another unit of Aurochs, what ends up happening is that the Shaman rolls a d6. On a roll of 1 through 3, he extends the range of his spell by 6 inches, and on a roll of 4 up, he increases the damage of his spell by 1 additional mortal wound. So because of that, he's within 10 inches of 2 units of Aurochs, so because that gets 2d6, he rolls a 1 and 3, which extends the range by 12 inches. So because of that, his Foot of Gork spell can easily reach across the battlefield and kind of reach over to my Twang. He tries to lock that spell up, but unfortunately for him, though, he was unable to secure the casting value in order to knock it off. So because of that, his magic is kind of wasted on that part. So with the hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase. And as you can see in this photo, he actually moves up kind of gingerly for the most part, kind of apprehensively and just kind of defensively, which kind of makes sense because he's outnumbered 2-to-1 on this battlefield. So the first thing he does, he moves up his forces on the left-hand side, so he sends up the Crimson Killers as well as Gringor Ironhide to take up positions between the altar there on the left-hand side, as well as that ruined building on the right-hand side, so that way his flanks are protected, so that way it has to force me to kind of come at him straight ahead in a kind of a bottleneck. At the same time, on the right-hand side, he moves up them Red Groovy as well as them Bloods. He moves up the Bloods so that way they're in a blocking position between the ruined building on the right as well as the altar there on the bottom right hand corner, so once again protecting his flanks. And he also sends up, I believe he sends up the the Red Dead Cruvy, I'm sorry. He moves them up just a normal movement allowance, so that way they can kind of intercept anything that comes by trying to secure that altar. And that pretty much makes up his move phase on this one. Here's a close-up of the left-hand flank. Up in the front, you have the Crimson Killers, and the back behind them, they have Gringor Ironhide. And the way they're positioned, they have their flanks defended, which is pretty smart. He does try to channel for the reward for the altar, so because he does manage to get the reward, so because that Gringor Ironhide also causes +1 damage with all of his melee weapons, which is pretty good because Gringor Ironhide is kind of a beast in close combat. And on the right hand side, you can see the red cred Kruvy as well as Nimbloods, as well as Ruga the Stunty Flare taking up blocking positions to defend the Altar of Doom, which I believe is +1 to wound. He does try to channel the reward from the altar, but unfortunately for my buddy Brother Grimm, he was unable to secure that one. So because of that, they don't get any bonuses for being near that altar. And that pretty much makes the move phase. And because there is no charge phase, fight phase, or battle shock phase, it pretty much makes up turn number 1 for the Ironjawz. We go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Bonesplitterz. Alright, so that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 1 into the hero phase for the Bonesplitterz. And as you can see in this photo, the very first thing I do is I spend a command point activating my Savage Orc Big Boss's command ability. So that way, anything with all the units within 10 inches of him, if they roll a 6 to hit, they generate additional attack, just in case these guys get engaged in close combat. Kind of important to do that as well. At the same time, I also use my champion. I do two things. First of all, I cast I originally tried to cast Arcane Bolt to try to hit the Red Dead Kruvy, but unfortunately for me, I was unable to get the roll off, so because that, I was able to do that. However, I did get Mystic Shield. Mystic Shield is not all that impressive. It got kind of nerfed a little bit in this new edition of Age of Sigmar, but it's better than nothing to have saves for my forces. And at the same time, I also try to channel the reward from the Altar Resiliency and imagine to be successful on that. So now because of that, all my guys also have +1 to their saves, which is actually pretty good because, you know, Savage Orcs need it because they don't have much in terms of armor or saves for the most part. At the same time, I also activate my battalion ability for my Cunning Ruck, which means I get to choose a unit within 10 inches of my war boss, my big boss, and have them either move, pile in, or shoot. I decide to have my Twang Tank open fire upon the Red Dead Kruvy. Oh my god, that name is driving me nuts. The Red Dead Kruvy. So all 10 of my Savage Orcs open fire, which I get 20 shots with, which is kind of nice, but I have to roll 5s or higher in order to hit, and 4 more to wound. Unfortunately, the only thing I was able to do is able to inflict 1 wound onto the Red Dead Kruvy, and that's all I was able to do on that part. So kind of uneventful, but you know, I'll take what I can get at this point. So with the hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase. Alright, so in the move phase, as you can see in this photo, I decided to move up forward pretty quickly as well. I decided not to run any of my forces because I wanted my Twang Tank to be able to shoot the next following turn. At the same time, I didn't want to risk getting a counter charge from my opponent as well, so that was also one thing I was kind of worried about. So as you can see in this photo, I just move up all my forces. There's just normal movement allowance. On the left-hand side, the Waaaghpokeylipz and the Waaaghpokeylipz, they start moving forward and starts funneling in towards the Crimson Killers on the left-hand side to engage those guys pretty soon. At the same time, I also move up my the Twang Twang. I move them up 5 inches as well, with the characters behind them falling in close behind, so that way they can lend some support. And the reason why I don't run the Twang Twangs is because I want those guys to be able to shoot in the following shooting phase. And that pretty much makes it the move phase for turn number 1 for the Bonesplitterz. Here's a close-up of the Waaaghpokeylipz and the Waaaghpokeylipz moving up forward slowly to start making their way towards the Ironjawz across the battlefield because I want to engage those guys. Unfortunately, I'm right next to the Altar of Rage, which gives you +1 to hit, but I don't have any champions over there, so because of that, I can't access that reward. So that was kind of a pity. And here's a close-up of my Twang Twang moving up forward so that way they get closer range, so that way they can engage enemies with their Stingabos. And you can see that where's that Great Green Prophet, as well as Papa Shango, they're also following them up with it as well. And I was able to get the Altar Resilience's reward onto this unit as well, so they get +1 to their saves, which is pretty epic, to be honest. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. Alright, and so this time in the shooting phase, it turned out just a little bit better this time around when I opened fired. I had opened fire with all 20 shots of my Twang Twang. In the end, I managed to kill 3 members of the Red Cred Kruvy, so because of that was pretty epic as well. Then that was pretty awesome just to see the amount of firepower that took place on that. Having the ability to shoot twice in a turn, that's just pretty epic for me. And I just kind of like the way the Cunning Ruck is working so far. There is no charge phase because I decided not to charge anything forward because I just simply was not within range. At the same time, because there's no charge phase, there is no combat phase. In the Battle Shock phase, my friend rolled a 1 for this unit, so because that none of them flee, and that pretty much makes up turn number 1. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and my friend and I both roll for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Ironjawz. My buddy Brother Grimm was able to secure the initiative on this one. So in the hero phase, the first thing he does, of course, is once again channel for his command ability, which is the +1 to hit for all units within 10 inches. He gives that bonuses to the Crimson Killers as well as himself, so that's pretty good as well. Considering this guy also has +1 to his damage to his melee weapons, that makes this guy very, very deadly in close combat. So I am a little bit apprehensive of actually fighting him in close combat. At the same time, my friend Brother Grimm also begins to channel with his wizard in order to use Foot of Gork again. He rolls 2d6 because within 10 inches, oh sorry, not 2d6. Yeah, he rolls 2d6 because he's within inches of within range of Auric units. So when he rolls it, he gets 2 4s, which means that his spell has +2 damage for his mortal spells, for his mortal wounds. He does try to cast Foot of Gork once again against my Twang Twang, but luckily this time I am within range of dispelling it. So because of that, I do unbind his spell, and he's unable to do it. I think he got like the casting value of 8, and I got like a casting of the unbinding roll of I think 9. I think I rolled an 8, and I got a +1 because of my Squiggly Beast, which allowed me to unbind the spell. So got really lucky on that one because Foot of Gork is dangerous, especially since he has +2 additional mortal wounds on that one. Alright, so with the hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase. Now, if you'll notice in this photo, you'll notice that the red dead Kruvy are missing in the middle of the photo. And you'll notice they're right against my Twang Twang, the unit of the Twang Twang. And the reason why that is the case is because I accidentally forgot to take the photo of the movement phase, and I didn't remember until during the charge phase to take the photo. So if you're wondering why the red dead Kruvy are suddenly all the way across the battlefield, actually that's why. But as you can see here, for the most part though, my friend doesn't move any of his units at all. In fact, he keeps his 2 units of 5 his Boys on the left-hand side, the Crimson Killers on the right-hand side, Dim Bloods. He keeps those guys located directly where they're at, so that way their flanks are defended by both the altars as well as those ruined buildings. He also has his characters remain behind as well. The only unit that he actually commits forward is his red dead Kruvy, and that's because he only has 2 of those Ironjawz left. But he kind of stays in position to maintain defense, which I thought was kind of interesting because I was afraid that he was going to try to countercharge me. That's why I moved kind of slowly up forward on the first turn. But now that I got the idea that he's pretty much staying behind to defend his objectives, that means I have to take the offense on this one. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen for the most part. And like I said before, you can see in the top there, the 2 members of the red Kruvy, they charge forward as well to, get stuck in with the Twang Twang. Here's a close-up of the Crimson Killers as well as Grimgor Ironhide maintaining defensive position next to the altar of the altar of change, as well as that ruined building to maintain the defensive positions. And here's a close-up of Dim Bloods as well as Rugged Stunted Flare, just maintain their defensive positions so that way, they're not outflanked. So with the move phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because the Ironjawz have no shooting assets in their army, and we go directly to the charge phase. And like I mentioned earlier, I took the photo after the charge phase, but as you can see here, he has 2 members left of the red dead Kruvy, so he sends those guys charging forward to act as a speed bump to kind of slow down the advance of the Twang Twang. And so because of that, those 2 units will be engaged in close combat here in momentarily. So with the charge phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And as you can see, they really didn't cause any damage to me. They did get to fight first, but unfortunately for him, though, his dice just totally abandoned him during the fight phase. I never saw... He actually fought with 2 strikes, what he ended up doing with his using his 2 chop abilities, so that way he has 6 attacks. For the most part, half his attacks were like 1s and 2s, so because I didn't really do anything, the other 3 hits did hit, but because I was next to the altar of resiliency there, I had a 5-up save. 2 of them got saved from my normal armor save because of that, and then the last one was actually saved by the war paint save that the unit has. So because that, I was able to succeed in not losing a single Savage Auric. In exchange, my Arrow Boys, of course, attacked back. As you can see, there's like a little hole in the middle of the formation there, and that's because when I piled in, I completely surrounded them and attacked all 10 of my Arrow Boys, and I managed to kill off those last 2 Ironjawz. And that pretty much rounds up the turn on this one. There is no Battle Shock test because no other additional units took any casualties. So because of that, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Bonesplitterz. Alright, so we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Bonesplitterz. We go directly into the hero phase. The first thing I do is I once again spin my command point to activate the command ability from my Savage Orc Big Boss. He gives a additional hit, a roll of 6 equals an additional attack for all my units within 10 inches. So I give that command ability off. At the same time, I do try to cast Arcane Bolt with Waaaghpokeylipz the Great Green Prophet because I'm not within range yet to use Waagh's Revenge. Unfortunately for me, though, my spell got unbound by a Rugged Stunted Flare. I think I rolled like really low. I think I barely just got that spell off, and he I think rolled an 11 to unbind it. So because of that spell didn't go anywhere. Luckily for me though, I was able to get off Mystic Shield again. Once again, not that impressive, but it's better than nothing, especially since I have to worry about my Twang Twang taking some damage. So because of that, that's what I did for the hero phase. And because I also have a hero phase as well, I decided to use my battalion ability for my Cunning Ruck. And this time I use my Cunning Ruck ability within my the Waaaghpokeylipz because they're within 10 inches of my Savage Orc boss, and I decided to use that to have them move up 5 inches forward, just like a normal movement allowance. And the reason why is because I need to close the distance between my Waaaghpokeylipz as well as the Crimson Killers, and I wanted them to kind of be up at the same line of movement as my Waaagh on the left-hand side as well, so that way both units can charge into the Crimson Killers and hopefully wipe them off the board. So with the hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase. And as you can see in this photo, I start moving my forces up forward. The first thing I do is I move up the Waaaghpokeylipz as well as the Waaaghpokeylipz. I move them up the normal 5 inches forward, and the reason why is because I want to get within charge range of this unit. I'm about 7 inches away from the Crimson Killers with the Waaaghpokeylipz, and I think I'm 8 inches away from with my Waaaghpokeylipz. But because I do have Skull Thumpers in both units, I do get +2 on my charge rolls. So, getting 6s and getting 5s in order to close combat with these guys, that's doable on 2d6. So because of that, I just move them up there 5 inches so that way they can charge in the next turn. At the same time, on the right hand side, I just move up my entire mob of the Twang Twang. I move them up their normal movement allowance because I plan on shooting at them bloods and hopefully whittle that unit down a little bit before I charge into them and finish them up in close combat. I also move up Papa Shango as well as Waaaghpokeylipz. I move those guys up to support the Twang Twang as well. And that pretty much makes the move phase on this one. Here's a close-up of the Waaaghpokeylipz and the Waaaghpokeylipz setting themselves up to charge directly into the Crimson Killers and fight against those guys in close combat. And here's a close-up of the Twang Twang getting ready to put some long-range hunting with their Stingabows against them bloods. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And as you can see in this photo, I open up with all 20 shots from my Twang Twang. Managed to kill one of them bloods, so managed to kill one of those Ironjawz and put a floating wound onto another one. So 3 wounds. That's not bad considering I need to roll 5s and 6s in order to hit. So, I'll take whatever I can get at this point for the shooting phase. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the charge phase. And as you can see in the charge phase, both the Waaaghpokeylipz and the Waaaghpokeylipz have no problem closing the distance, charging into that gap to take on the Crimson Killers there between the Altar of Rage as well as the Altar of Change as well as that ruined building as well. Unfortunately for me though, because these guys have their flanks protected by those 2 terrain features, it does kind of bottleneck my forces. So while I do have much more than he does, in terms of numbers, I do have to reach around. The only good thing I have is that the Waaaghpokeylipz, which is the unit on the right hand side, they have Savage Stickers, so because they do have a 2-inch range for their attacks, so I pile in as many as I can into the right hand side there, so that way they can get within range of their attacks, because more of them can engage in close combat than the ones on the left hand side. On the left hand side, I do try to maximize as much as I can with the Waaaghpokeylipz because they only have a 1-inch range with their weapons, but I can get what I can. So pretty much I have about 15, maybe 16 attacks going into this unit, so hopefully I'll be able to beat these hard boys pretty bad and destroy them pretty quickly. So with the charge phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And as you can see in this photo, combat phase is pretty lackluster for the most part. We basically only managed to cause 3 wounds apiece. 3 wounds with the combination of both my Waaaghpokeylipz and Waaaghpokeylipz going into the hard boys. I was only able to inflict 3 wounds. I killed 1 hard boy and put a floating one on another one. Not that impressive. The reason why is because Savage Aurochs only have 1 attack apiece for the most part. They do have 2 wounds apiece, which is nice, but that's not much in terms of attacks because that's just the way they're kind of designed by the game. And plus, hard boys are really hard to kill because they have really good armor saves. On the flip side, my opponent was able to put all of his attacks. I believe 3 of his hard boys went into my Waaaghpokeylipz on the left-hand side. Managed to put down 3 wounds as well, killing one of my Savage Aurochs and putting a floating one on another one. And I believe the one set of attacks he had going up against the Waaaghpokeylipz, the spear-wielding Savage Orcs, was unable to do much of anything at that point. So because of that, not much happened. So because the combat phase ended, we go to the Battle Shock phase. These 2 units test for Battle Shock. They are perfectly fine within their tolerances for their bravery because they're within 3 inches of the enemy. So because they get +2 their bravery, so they're not going anywhere. At the same time, across the battlefield, I didn't get a photo of it, but them bloods also passed their Battle Shock test without any problems whatsoever as well. So with the Battle Shock phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 and roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Bonesplitterz this time. I was able to finally secure the initiative on turn number 3, so I get to go first. The very first thing I do, of course, is I activate my heroes for the hero phase. I spend my command point again, command ability again, to activate the command ability for every single hit roll of 6. I get an extra attack. I put that on my Twang Twang in case they get charged. At the same time, I also do try to cast 2 spells with Waaagh. I do try to cast Mystic. Not Mystic Spell. I try to cast Arcane Bolt. Unfortunately for me, though, my opponent was able to unbind that spell, so I was able to put any harm to on them bloods. So because of that, I do try to cast Mystic Shield again, but I just didn't have the casting value. I think I rolled like a 3 is what I ended up rolling, and then even with the +1 casting, it didn't really do much of anything. So because of that, Waaagh does not get any of his bonuses for a spell. So that part was kind of rough. However, I do activate the Twang Twang to shoot again using my Cunning Ruck Battalion ability. And as you can see in this photo, I managed to cause another 3 wounds once again onto Dim Bloods as well. So I managed to kill another one of those Ard boys, as well as put a floating wound on another one as well. So that part's kind of nice. So now this unit is nice and soft. That's basically giving me enough time for me to charge in and finish these guys off in close combat. And that's pretty much what I'm planning on doing after I get to shooting with them. So with the hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase. And here's an overhead shot of the battlefield. As you can see on the left-hand side, the Waaaghpokeylipz as well as the Waaagh, they're still engaged in close combat with the Crimson Killers on the left-hand side. So because of that, they're not really going anywhere because they're still fighting. However, on the right-hand side, I do move up my Twang as well as Waagh and as well as my Papa Shango. I move them up the normal 5 inches so that way they're straight down the barrel, looking directly at the Ard boys of Dim Bloods. They're about, I think, about 8 inches away is what they are. So that's kind of good. Plus, I get +2 for charge rolls because my Bone Thumper, so hopefully I'll be able to close the distance pretty good. It's going to be a really long range bomb charge for me to make my Papa Shango as well as Waagh to get stuck in, but I'll take what I can get at this point to engage my enemy. Here's a close-up of the Twang as well as Waagh and Papa Shango getting ready to charge forward into the Dim Bloods over here on the right-hand side. And here's a close-up of the Waaaghpokeylipz and the Waaagh still fighting against the Crimson Killers. And that pretty much makes the movement phase on this one. So with movement phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, I was only able to put 2 wounds onto the unit of Dim Blood. So I managed to kill off the standard bearer and put another floating wound onto the musician. So not really stellar, but at the same time though, there's only 2 of those R boys left, as well as the Weird Knob Shaman. So odds are in my favor, so I'm looking forward to that, to causing the pain here a little bit in the charge phase. And here's a close-up of the charge phase. As you can see, I think I rolled like an 8 for my Twang, then plus 2 for the charge roll, so they were definitely within range to close in around the rest of them Bloods. At the same time, though, Waagh, as well as Papa Shango, they rolled out of the box their charge rolls. I rolled box cars for Waagh, so because he was able to close a distance between himself as well as Ruga the Stunty Flare. At the same time, I rolled an 11 for Papa Shango. So he rolled out of the box for his charge roll too. So because of that, he charged directly into Ruga's Stunted Flare. So both of my champions are fighting his champion. And I have my entire mob of 10 Arrow Boys facing down the 2 R Boys in the center. So I'm really excited to see how this combat kind of turns out as well. So with the charge phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And the combat phase is an absolute slaughter over here on the right-hand flank for my opponent. I believe what ended up happening with Ruga's Stunty Flare, we managed to kill that guy off pretty quickly between the 2 attacks, between Waagh as well as Papa Shango. I think Waagh put 2 wounds on him, and then Papa Shango was able to finish him off for the rest of the attacks, so that part was kind of nice as well. Ruga's Stunty Flare, when he tried to counterattack, I think he tried to concentrate his attacks on Waagh, who was unable to make any of his attacks. I believe like most of them failed. One wound did slip through, but I was able to ward save it with the War Paint ability for Waagh, the Great Green Prophet. So that part was kind of nice. On the other hand, they do manage to kill 2 of those R boys. There's only 2 of them left, but they fought like with their lives dependent on. They fought with their great weapons, so that with their great choppers, so that way they can get through the armor save from the bonuses that I get from the Altar Resiliency. So they fought with those. They managed to kill 2 of my Savage Orc Arrow Boys, so that part was kind of sad. However, my Arrow Boys were able to finish those guys off in close combat. Too sweet, so that part was kind of cool. So that rounds up the combat phase over here on the right-hand flank. Meanwhile, over here on the left-hand flank, I was able to kill, I was able to kill almost the entire unit, actually. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I managed to kill the rest of the unit off. I think I killed the last 3 members of the Crimson Killers. There's 1 guy left, but during the Battle Shock phase, though, he runs away during the Battle Shock phase because he fails his Battle Shock test. But anyways, for the most part, I think it was the Waaaghpokeylipz that ended up killing the most of them, and the Waaagh kind of flowed their role, so really not much happened in that phase at all. However, the Ard boys, they managed to kill, I think, they managed to kill one of my members of the Waaagh as well, so that guy also died. Also managed. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold up. I made a mistake. The R boys was able to put enough wounds to kill 2 of my Waaaghpokeylipz guys on the left hand side and put a floating wound on another one. So they put 5 wounds onto that unit. So that was actually pretty spectacular to see that happen. That's what happened. And then of course the counterattacks managed to wipe out everybody except for 1 guy, and that guy ends up running away during the Battle Shock test. So that part was kind of sad for Brother Grimm, leaving his 1 general, Grimgor Ironhide, all by himself to fight in the next turn. And with that being said, that takes us directly to the end of the game. The reason why is because my friend Brother Grim only has his general left over on his army, and he knows that he can't possibly win, not against all the savage orcs they have still left alive, as well as my champions. So as you can see here, they're pretty much tabled for the most part the Ironjawz of the Immortulz. We put that name to the test. So because of that, there's an awesome win for the Bonesplitterz. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the post game, talk about exactly what we did for afterwards, how much glory that each team got, as well as our recruitments, because this battle report is now officially over. All right, so let's go and talk about the post game real quick and talk about what happened for both of these warbands. Starting off with the Immortulz, because my buddy Brother Grim did lose this scenario, he only gets 1 glory point as a result of that. So because then we go to the recruitment phase to see exactly what happens, we decided to choose not to roll off on this one. We decided that every battle will decide whether we want to roll for it or to choose. My friend Brother Grim decided he wanted to choose instead. He decided to recruit 5 more Auroch Ard boys, and he added those 5 Auroch Ard boys to his Crimson Killers. So now that unit will grow from 5 Ard boys up to 10, which makes that unit actually pretty deadly. For the Peeple Eataz, which is my warband, because we won this one, I won D3 glory points because I actually rolled a 5 on that one. So because of that, I got 3 glory points, which is pretty awesome because you need 10 to win a campaign. I also decided to recruit as well. I decided to recruit 2 Savage Big Stabbers because Big Stabbers are awesome and they're just very orky in the way they do things. And that pretty much wraps up the post game for their very first battle of Waaaghpokeylipz Now. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Google+, as well as blogger.com for all the latest and greatest news about our hobby. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. You guys stay classy. We will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.